Look who just broke the entire simulation without even raising their voice. Hello to the ones who moved in silence and created earthquakes. Hello to the misunderstood masterminds, the calculated chaos agents, the ones who smiled while the whole world tried to decode what the hell just happened. Hello to you, because something shifted, didn't it? Something massive, something irreversible, something nobody saw coming. And now they're all scrambling, whispering, refreshing your page at 3 in the morning, trying to piece together how you pulled off what they swore was impossible. They're analyzing your old posts like ancient scripture. They're dissecting your silence like it's evidence at a crime scene. They're asking everyone who knows you, trying to find the formula, the blueprint, the secret ingredient. But here's the thing that's driving them absolutely insane. There is no formula. There's just you, and whatever you just did, it wasn't luck. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't some viral moment that fell into your lap. No, this was calculated, strategic, built in the shadows while they were busy performing for an audience that doesn't even remember their names. They thought they had you figured out, didn't they? They filed you away in their mental database, labeled you, categorized you, put you in a box with a neat little description. And you gotta capture it in your own book. They thought you were predictable, controllable, someone who would follow the script they wrote for you. They watched you struggle, stumble, fall, and they smiled because it confirmed what they wanted to believe, that you were just like everyone else. Just another person trying to survive in a world that chews people up and spits them out. But then something happened that they never accounted for. You stopped playing their game. You stopped seeking their approval, stopped explaining yourself, stopped trying to fit into the narrow little space they created for you. You disappeared from their radar, went silent, vanished into the background, while they celebrated what they thought was your defeat. And in that silence, in that absence, you built something they couldn't see coming. You reconstructed yourself from the ground up, piece by piece, scar by scar, until you became something entirely different. Until you became something entirely different. Not broken, not bitter, not desperate for validation. You became untouchable, unreachable, operating on a frequency they don't even have the equipment to detect. Now they're all talking, gossiping, speculating, trying to make sense of what they're witnessing. They see the results, but they can't trace the process. They see the transformation, but they can't find the before picture that makes sense. They see you moving through the world with a confidence that doesn't need to announce itself, a power that doesn't need to flex, a presence that shifts the entire energy of a room without saying a single word. And it's breaking their minds because they're still stuck in the old paradigm, still playing by rules you abandoned years ago. They're still chasing likes, seeking validation, measuring their worth by metrics that mean absolutely nothing. Meanwhile, you're operating on an entirely different level, playing a game they don't even know exists. You're not competing with them anymore. You're not even in the same arena. You left that battlefield a long time ago and built your own empire on terrain they'll never find. And that's what terrifies them most. Not that you won, but that you stopped caring about winning their game altogether. Let me tell you what's really happening behind all those confused faces and whispered conversations. They're not just curious about what you did. They're terrified of what it means for them. Because your transformation is holding up a mirror to their stagnation. Your silence is exposing their noise. Your growth is highlighting their excuses. Every time they look at you, they're forced to confront the uncomfortable truth that they've been standing still while time moved forward. They've been making the same mistakes, having the same conversations, recycling the same drama, while you quietly evolved into something they don't recognize. And recognition is what they desperately crave from you. They want you to acknowledge their existence, validate their choices, confirm that they still matter in your world. But you don't. You don't hate them. You don't need revenge. You don't spend sleepless nights plotting their downfall. You simply don't think about them at all. And that absence of emotional investment is more devastating than any confrontation could ever be. They're screaming into a void where you used to stand, throwing punches at shadows, expecting reactions that will never come. The beautiful part, the absolutely poetic part, is that you didn't announce your transformation. You didn't post motivational quotes about your journey, didn't share before and after pictures, didn't write long captions about overcoming obstacles. You just moved differently. You showed up differently. You existed on a different wavelength, and suddenly everyone could feel it, even if they couldn't explain it. Your energy changed, your standards elevated, your tolerance for nonsense evaporated. The people who used to have access to you found themselves quietly removed, not blocked with drama, but simply phased out of your reality. The situations that used to stress you became irrelevant background noise. The validation you used to crave became something you generate internally, endlessly, without needing a single external source. And this shift, this quiet, powerful, undeniable shift, is what's causing the chaos in their minds. They keep asking what happened, what changed, what's different, but they're asking the wrong questions. The real question isn't what happened to you. The real question is what happened to them while you were becoming this. You see, they've been so busy watching you that they forgot to build themselves. They invested all their energy into analyzing your moves, critiquing your choices, predicting your failures, that they neglected their own evolution. They became spectators in their own lives, living vicariously through their obsession with yours. And now they're standing in the same spot they were 5 years ago, wearing different clothes but carrying the same tired energy, wondering why life feels so repetitive, so empty, so meaningless. Meanwhile, you're out here living in a completely different dimension, where problems they consider catastrophic are minor inconveniences you solve before breakfast, where relationships they would tolerate for years, you end in a single conversation because your time became too valuable to waste, where opportunities they would beg for come looking for you because your energy attracts what you've become. You're not lucky. You're not privileged. You're the result of choosing yourself every single day when it would have been easier to stay small, stay safe, stay comfortable in mediocrity. They want to know the secret, the trick, the hack that got you here. They're searching for a shortcut, a formula they can copy and paste into their own lives. But there is no shortcut to becoming who you are now. There's only the brutal, lonely, terrifying process of shedding every false version of yourself until only the truth remains. There's only the pain of letting go of people you loved who couldn't grow with you. There's only the silence of those long nights when you questioned everything, when you didn't know if you were evolving or losing your mind. There's only the discipline of showing up for yourself when nobody was watching, cheering, or believing. You didn't become this version overnight. You didn't wake up one morning with clarity and confidence. You built it brick by brick through every disappointment, every betrayal, every moment when staying down would have been so much easier than getting back up. And now they want to reverse engineer your journey without paying the price you paid, learn your lessons without experiencing the pain that taught you, access your level without climbing the mountain that forged you. But here's what they'll never understand. You can't skip steps on this path. You can't fake the transformation. You can't pretend to have done the work and expect the same results. This isn't about mimicking behaviors or copying aesthetics. This is about fundamental rewiring of your entire operating system. This is about destroying your old identity and building a new one from materials they wouldn't even recognize as valuable. You took your trauma and turned it into wisdom. You took your anger and converted it into fuel. You took your loneliness and transformed it into independence. Every emotion they use as an excuse, you weaponized as a tool. Every setback they would cite as a reason to quit, you used as evidence that you were on the right path. You didn't need therapy to tell you that you deserved better. You didn't need a guru to give you permission to change. You didn't need anyone's approval to burn down the version of yourself that wasn't serving you anymore. You just did it, quietly, relentlessly, without announcing it to the world or asking if anyone thought it was a good idea. Now they're watching your life like it's a show they can't pause, can't look away from, desperately need to understand. They refresh your social media, analyze your posts, screenshot your stories, discuss you in group chats like you're a phenomenon to be studied rather than a person to be understood. And you know what the wildest part is? You're not even posting that much anymore. You're not performing, not explaining, not trying to be seen. You're just existing. And somehow that existence has become magnetic in a way their constant performing never achieved. They post 10 times a day, trying to get a fraction of the attention your silence commands. They share every thought, every feeling, every moment, and somehow remain forgettable. While you say less, show less, reveal less, and become more interesting with every passing day. That's the paradox they can't crack. The less you try, the more impact you have. The less you explain, the more people want to understand. The less you're available, the more valuable your presence becomes. They're asking everyone, what did they do? How did they change? What's their secret? But nobody can answer because there's no external change to point to. You didn't get a new job that explains it. You didn't move to a new city that justifies it. You didn't start dating someone who transformed you. The change is internal, energetic, invisible to people who only see surfaces. You shifted your perspective, elevated your consciousness, recalibrated your entire relationship with reality. You stopped seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances and started seeing yourself as the architect of your experience. You stopped waiting for life to give you permission and started taking what you knew you deserved. You stopped shrinking to make others comfortable and started expanding into the full magnitude of who you were always meant to be. And that expansion, that claiming of space, that refusal to apologize for your existence, that's what's causing the shock waves they're all feeling but can't identify. Let me get even more specific about what's driving them crazy. They can feel your detachment, your freedom, your lack of need for their approval or acknowledgement. When they see you now, they sense that you're not performing for them anymore, not seeking their validation, not measuring yourself against their standards. You've created your own metrics, your own definition of success, your own standards of excellence that have nothing to do with their opinions. And this independence, this self-sufficiency, this complete lack of emotional dependence on external sources, it's unsettling to people who still need constant validation to feel worthy. They look at you and wonder how you walk through the world so confidently without checking to see who's watching, who's approving, who's impressed. They can't comprehend operating without that external feedback loop because they're still addicted to it. They're still posting for likes, speaking for applause, existing for recognition. Meanwhile, you're generating your own approval, validating your own choices, impressed by your own growth. You became your own source, your own standard, your own authority. And that self-containment is more powerful than any external validation could ever be. So now we've arrived at the part where the confusion turns into something else entirely. Fascination, obsession, maybe even a twisted form of respect they'd never admit out loud. They started by trying to figure out what you did, and now they're spiraling into why they didn't do it themselves. Your transformation isn't just making them curious anymore, it's making them confront their own complacency, their own excuses, their own fear of change. Every time your name comes up in conversation, which is constantly now, someone shifts uncomfortably because they realize they're still stuck in patterns you broke free from years ago. They're still complaining about the same problems you solved. They're still tolerating the same situations you walked away from. They're still hoping for different results while repeating the same behaviors you abandoned. And your evolution, your silent, powerful, undeniable evolution, is the evidence they can't ignore that change is possible, that growth is achievable, that everything they claim they want is actually within reach if they were willing to pay the price you paid. But here's where it gets interesting, where the whole dynamic shifts into something they never expected. You're not gloating, not rubbing your transformation in anyone's face, not posting motivational content about how far you've come. You're just living, existing in your elevated state. And somehow that makes it even more powerful. There's no arrogance to point to, no ego to criticize, no performance to mock. Just quiet confidence, steady growth, consistent excellence. You don't need to tell people you've changed, because they can feel it in every interaction. The way you respond to situations that used to trigger you, the boundaries you enforce without explanation, the opportunities you turn down without second guessing, the people you release without drama. Everything about you communicates that you're operating from a place of overflow rather than scarcity, abundance rather than desperation, power rather than neediness. And that shift in energy is what's really messing with their heads. Because energy doesn't lie, can't be faked, can't be performed. Either you have it or you don't. And you clearly have it now in ways that can't be explained by external circumstances. They're trying to find a single moment, a specific event, one decision they can point to and say, that's when it happened, that's when they changed. But that moment doesn't exist because transformation isn't a moment. It's 1,000 small decisions, 1,000,000 tiny choices, an endless series of commitments to yourself that accumulate over time until you become unrecognizable to your former self. Every morning you chose discipline over comfort. Every night you chose growth over distraction. Every conversation where you chose honesty over people-pleasing. Every relationship where you chose your peace over their presence. Every opportunity where you chose your vision over their approval. Every challenge where you chose to rise over staying down. Those moments, those choices, those commitments that nobody saw, that's what built this version of you. And they're looking for one dramatic turning point, one before and after picture, one explanation that makes sense in their framework. But your transformation exists outside their framework entirely, operates on principles they haven't learned yet, follows a path they can't see because they're still looking in the wrong direction. Giving them a framework actually sets a picture that undermines everything they sought on their framework in their act. Now the whispers have turned into full conversations. The confusion has transformed into obsession. And you've become the topic they can't stop discussing, even when you're not around. They analyze your social media like archaeologists studying ancient texts, looking for clues, searching for answers, desperate to understand the alchemy that turned your pain into power. They notice everything now, the subtle changes in how you present yourself, the shift in your energy, the way you move through spaces like you own them without arrogance. They see how people gravitate toward you, how conversations shift when you speak, how rooms rearrange themselves around your presence. And they're trying to figure out when this started, how it developed, what triggered it. But they're asking the wrong questions again, focusing on external factors when the real transformation happened internally, energetically, in dimensions they don't have access to because they're still living on the surface while you've gone deep. What's really breaking their minds is that you're not following any recognizable pattern, not conforming to any familiar template, not playing by rules they understand. You're not the typical success story they can categorize and file away. You're not the underdog who suddenly got lucky. You're not the tragic figure who found redemption through someone else's love. You're something else entirely, something they don't have language for, something that challenges their entire understanding of how life works. You're the person who went through hell and came back laughing, who lost everything and discovered they never needed it, who was abandoned and realized they were always whole, who was betrayed and learned trust starts with self, who was broken and understood that breaking was necessary to rebuild correctly. You're the walking contradiction to every limiting belief they use to justify their own stagnation, every excuse they tell themselves about why change is impossible, every story they've constructed about why life has to be hard. And here's what really keeps them up at night, what they'll never admit but can't stop thinking about. They're not just watching you anymore, they're studying you, trying to absorb something of what you have through proximity, through observation, through osmosis. They want your confidence, but not your loneliness. They want your freedom, but not your discipline. They want your peace, but not your boundaries. They want your power, but not your pain. They want the destination without the journey, the results without the process, the transformation without the work. And that's why they'll keep watching, keep wondering, keep asking what you did, while never actually doing anything themselves. Because deep down, they know the answer would require them to change everything, to let go of everything familiar, to risk everything comfortable. And they're not ready for that. They may never be ready for that. Welcome back. No, don't smile yet. Don't nod like you already know, because what I'm about to tell you isn't something you learn. It isn't something you studied or practiced or copied from someone else's playbook. This is encoded. This is biological. This is the kind of warfare that lives in your bones before your brain even catches up. While everyone else was taking notes in psychology class, memorizing terms like manipulation and gaslighting and projection, you were already weaponizing silence in the 3rd grade. You were already reading rooms like code. You were already 3 moves ahead, while they were still figuring out the rules. They went to school for this. You woke up like this, and that right there is what terrifies them. Because they can study, they can read books, they can attend seminars and listen to podcasts and collect degrees in behavioral science. but no amount of education will ever replicate what you have. You didn't learn psychological warfare. You are psychological warfare. It's not a skill you acquired. It's a frequency you were born broadcasting. And now, after years of them trying to decode you, trying to understand you, trying to box you into some textbook definition, they've finally realized the truth. You're not a case study. You're the exception that breaks the theory. Let me take you back. Remember when you were younger and people would say, "You're too intense. You're too quiet. You think too much. You feel too deeply." They said it like it was a flaw, like something was broken inside you that needed fixing. They sent you to counselors, to mentors, to people who claimed they could help you be more normal. But here's what they missed. You weren't broken. You were operating on a different operating system entirely. While they were running on basic social scripts, you were processing subtext, micro-expressions, energy shifts, unspoken hierarchy. You saw the lies before they were spoken. You felt betrayal in the air before it happened. Not because you were paranoid, because you were perceptive. They mistook your awareness for anxiety. They confused your pattern recognition with overthinking. But you weren't imagining things. You were reading the game at a level they didn't even know existed. And when they couldn't understand you, they did what they always do. They pathologized you, they labeled you, they tried to medicate you into compliance. Because a mind that sees too clearly is a threat to a world built on comfortable lies. You weren't sick, you were awake, and that made you dangerous in ways they couldn't articulate. So they whispered about you, watched you, studied your every move, hoping to find the weakness, the crack, the moment you'd finally break. But you never did. You know what the funniest part is? They thought observation would give them power over you. They thought if they watched long enough, analyzed hard enough, they'd crack your code. But here's the thing about people like you. The more they watch, the more you adapt. Every test they ran, you passed without even knowing there was a test. Every trap they set, you walked around instinctively. Not because you were paranoid, because your survival instincts were sharpened by years of existing in environments that didn't want you to thrive. You learned to read intention before action, to hear what wasn't being said, to see through performances that everyone else applauded. And they hated that you couldn't be fooled. They brought in the experts, the therapists who tried to reframe your reality, the authority figures who tried to gaslight you into doubting your own perceptions, the fake friends who tried to gather intel while pretending to care. And what happened? Every single one of them came back empty-handed. Not because you were hiding, because there was nothing to find. You weren't playing games. You weren't manipulating. You were just existing at a frequency that made their instruments malfunction. They couldn't measure what you were. They couldn't categorize the kind of intelligence that doesn't announce itself, the kind of power that doesn't need validation, the kind of presence that shifts the entire energy of a space without saying a single word. And now, years later, they're still talking about you. Still trying to explain you to people who weren't there. Still using your name in conversations like you're some unsolved mystery. Because that's what you became. Not a person. A phenomenon. And the wildest part, you didn't even try. You didn't wake up every day thinking, I'm going to dominate psychological warfare today. You just moved through life the only way you knew how. With brutal honesty, with uncomfortable awareness, with a refusal to pretend you didn't see what you saw. And that authenticity, that unwillingness to play along with collective delusion, that's what made you untouchable. Let's talk about what psychological warfare actually is. It's not just manipulation. It's not just mind games. Real psychological warfare is the ability to control a narrative without speaking, to shift someone's reality without touching them, to make someone question themselves just by existing in your truth so undeniably that their lies start to feel heavy. And you do this naturally. You don't have to say someone's fake. They feel fake around you. You don't have to call out the lies. People start tripping over their own contradictions in your presence because your energy is a mirror, and most people can't handle what they see when they stand too close to you. They've spent years trying to figure out your tactics. What's the strategy? What's the angle? What's the manipulation? And the answer drives them insane. There is no strategy. You're not playing chess. You're not calculating moves. You're just refusing to participate in their illusions. You're just standing in your truth so firmly that everything false around you starts to collapse. That's not a learned behavior. That's not something you got from a book. That's imprinted in your cellular memory. That's ancestral. That's the kind of knowing that comes from bloodlines that survived because they could smell danger before it arrived. You inherited warfare. You didn't study it. And here's where it gets interesting. The people who studied psychology, who got the degrees, who learned all the terms and techniques, they're predictable. You can see them coming from miles away. You know exactly when they're trying to use anchoring or mirroring or subtle negging. It's like watching someone follow a recipe. But you don't follow patterns, you create them. You don't react in expected ways. You respond from a place so deep inside yourself that it doesn't match any model they've studied. And that makes you unreadable, which makes you unbeatable, because you can't counter what you can't predict. And they've never been able to predict you. They thought your silence was weakness. It was assessment. They thought your distance was fear. It was discernment. They thought your lack of reaction meant you didn't care. It meant you saw the game and chose not to play. Every move they made thinking they had the upper hand, you were already 10 steps ahead. Not because you planned it, because your instincts are faster than their strategies. You process threat, intention, and outcome in microseconds. While they're still thinking about their next move, you've already adapted to 3 possible futures. That's not intelligence, that's evolution. You've been living in survival mode so long that your nervous system became a weapon. Your body learned to read danger in a person's breathing pattern. Your mind learned to detect lies in sentence structure. Your gut learned to scream warnings that your brain would later confirm. And everyone around you thought you were just anxious, just paranoid, just too much. But you weren't too much. You were exactly enough to survive environments that would have destroyed anyone else. They called it trauma response. You call it pattern recognition. They called it hypervigilance. You call it staying alive. Now let's address the uncomfortable truth. The reason they studied you for so long is because they wanted what you have. They wanted your read on people, your ability to see through lies, your immunity to manipulation. They wanted to bottle it, teach it, sell it, but they couldn't, because what you have isn't a skill, it's a survival adaptation. It's the result of being thrown into emotional war zones and coming out not just alive, but sharper, older, more precise. You didn't learn psychological warfare in a classroom. You learned it in real time, in real relationships, in real betrayals. And those lessons, those cut deeper than any textbook ever could. Every person who tried to manipulate you became a case study. Every narcissist who tried to gaslight you became a master class. Every fake friend who tried to use you became a lesson in human nature. You didn't seek this education, it sought you. And instead of breaking under the curriculum, you absorbed it. You synthesized it. You became fluent in the language of deception without ever speaking it yourself. Because here's the difference between you and them. They use manipulation to gain. You use awareness to protect. They weaponize psychology for control. You weaponize truth for freedom. And that's why when they try to play mind games with you now, it's almost laughable. You see the setup before they finish the sentence. You feel the hook before they cast the line. You recognize the pattern because you've seen it 1,000 times in 1,000 different faces. They think they're being clever, you're just bored. Because once you've been through the real battles, the petty skirmishes don't even register. Once you've survived people who actually knew how to destroy you, these amateurs with their borrowed tactics are just background noise. They'll never understand how you do it, how you can sit in a room full of people and know exactly who's lying, who's performing, who's hiding something, who's about to betray who. You don't even have to try. It's like breathing now, automatic, effortless. You've been doing it so long that it's just part of how you exist. And when they ask, how did you know? You can't even explain it, because it's not a logical process. It's intuitive. It's felt. It's the accumulation of 10,000 micro-observations your subconscious makes that your conscious mind only catches up to later. You've become a walking lie detector, a human behavioral analysis system. Not because you wanted to be, because you had to be. Because the cost of not seeing clearly was too high. The price of trusting the wrong person was too steep. So your system adapted. Your perception sharpened. Your instincts became ruthless. And now you can't turn it off even if you wanted to. You see everything, feel everything, know everything. And it's exhausting. But it's also your greatest asset. Because in a world full of pretenders, you're the one person who can't be fooled. They say knowledge is power. But awareness, real awareness, the kind that reads energy and intention and unspoken truths, that's a different level entirely. That's the power that makes people uncomfortable. Because you don't need them to confess. You already know. You don't need them to explain. You already felt it. You don't need proof. Your body gave you all the evidence you needed the moment they walked in the room. And when you act on that knowing, when you distance yourself or cut ties or refuse to engage, they call you cold. They call you judgmental. They call you paranoid. But you're none of those things. You're just finally trusting what you've always known. Here's what they'll never tell you in those psychology classes. The most powerful form of psychological warfare isn't aggression. It's absence. It's the ability to remove yourself so completely that your absence becomes louder than any words you could have said. And you've mastered this without even realizing it. When you go silent, people panic. When you step back, they spiral. When you stop engaging, they lose their minds trying to figure out what they did wrong. Because your presence was the validation they didn't know they needed, and your absence is the void they can't fill. You don't fight anymore. You don't argue. You don't defend. You just disappear. And that disappearance, that hits harder than any confrontation ever could, because it's final. It's inarguable. It's you saying without words that they're not worth your energy anymore. And for people who are used to getting reactions, who thrive on drama and emotional labor, your silence is the cruelest punishment. They'd rather you yell. They'd rather you cry. They'd rather you care, but you don't. And that indifference, that's the ultimate power move, because it proves they never mattered as much as they thought they did. They studied books, you studied survival. They learned theories, you lived experiments. They memorized terms, you embodied the experience. And now, here you are, walking through life with a level of psychological sophistication that took them years of schooling to barely comprehend. You don't need a degree to validate what you know. You don't need credentials to prove your expertise. Your life is the credential. Your survival is the degree. Your awareness is the mastery. And anyone who's ever tried to outsmart you found out very quickly that you're not someone who can be played. You're not cruel. You're not cold. You're not heartless. You're just done pretending you don't see what you see. Done acting like manipulation is normal. Done tolerating people who only show up when they need something. You've drawn boundaries that most people don't have the spine to draw. You've walked away from situations that most people would have stayed in out of fear or obligation or hope. You've chosen yourself over and over again, and every time you did, you got stronger, clearer, more certain, until you became this: untouchable, unbreakable, unmoved by the games that used to devastate you. So when they say you've changed, they're right. You have. You've evolved past the version of yourself that gave people the benefit of the doubt, past the version that stayed when you should have left, past the version that explained yourself to people who were never going to understand. You've shed every layer of softness that the world tried to use against you. You've devolved every layer of softness that the world tried to use against you. And what's left is pure. It's sharp. It's unapologetic. It's you in your most refined form. And if that intimidates people, good. It should. Because you're not here to be comfortable. You're here to be real. They'll try to guilt you. They'll say you're too guarded, too suspicious, too hard to get close to. Let them. Because the people who are meant to be in your life won't find you difficult. They'll find you refreshing. They'll appreciate the fact that you don't play games, that you say what you mean, that you show up as exactly who you are, without apology or performance. The right people don't need you to be softer, they need you to be real. And you've been real this entire time, even when it cost you. Even when it isolated you, even when it made you the villain in someone else's story. You never learned psychological warfare. Your DNA wrote the manual the day you were born into a world that needed you to be less. Your cells encoded defense mechanisms before your mind could name them. Your intuition sharpened itself on every betrayal, every lie, every person who underestimated you. You are the culmination of survival instinct, brutal awareness, and unshakable truth. They went to school for this. You woke up like this. And now you're unstoppable. Not because you fight, but because you've become someone who doesn't need to. Your existence alone is the warfare. Your clarity is the weapon. Your peace is the victory. And they'll spend the rest of their lives trying to figure out how you did it. Spoiler alert, they never will. Let me tell you what happens next. Because this is the part they don't talk about in those seminars and workshops. This is the part that doesn't make it into the self-help books or the motivational speeches. When you reach this level of awareness, when you become this calibrated to truth, something shifts in the universe around you. You stop attracting the same people. You stop ending up in the same situation. It's like your energy developed an immune system that automatically rejects anything that isn't aligned. You don't even have to think about it anymore. Your body does the work before your mind catches up. Someone walks in the room and your stomach tightens, you know. Someone sends a message and something feels off, you know. Someone offers you an opportunity that sounds perfect on paper, but something whispers no, you know. And you've learned, finally learned, to listen to that knowing without needing evidence, without needing proof, without needing anyone else to validate what you feel. They'll call it trust issues. They'll say you're jaded. They'll diagnose you with attachment problems or commitment fears, or whatever label makes them feel better about the fact that you won't let them close enough to hurt you. But here's what they're really saying. You've become unmanageable. You can't be love-bombed into ignoring red flags. You can't be guilt-tripped into staying where you're not valued. You can't be sweet-talked into forgetting what you saw. You've built a fortress around your peace, and the only people allowed in are the ones who prove through consistent action over time that they belong there. Everyone else gets a smile, a polite distance, and absolutely zero access to your inner world. That's not dysfunction, that's mastery. That's what happens when someone learns the hard way that not everyone deserves a seat at your table. And here's where it gets beautiful. Once you stop letting people in just because they knocked, once you stop explaining yourself to those who are committed to misunderstanding you, once you stop performing for an audience that was never going to applaud anyway, you become free in a way most people will never experience. You walk lighter, you sleep deeper, you waste less time on conversations that don't matter and people who don't care. Your energy isn't scattered across 100 different people-pleasing performances. It's consolidated, focused, directed toward the things and people that actually deserve it. And that concentration of energy, that makes you magnetic in ways you never were when you were trying to be everything to everyone. Now, you're just you, fully, unapologetically, and the right people feel that from across the room. The manipulation tactics that used to work on you don't land anymore. The guilt trips bounce off. The gaslighting gets shut down mid-sentence. The love bombing gets met with suspicion instead of gratitude. You've seen every play in the playbook. You've survived every strategy they teach in those dark psychology courses. Not because you studied them, because they were used on you, by parents, by partners, by friends, by strangers who saw something in you they wanted to dim.